Van Gogh off in the last class, but we left him, the day, you remember the class before that, a week ago we left him all happy, and now we left him without an ear. That's kind of where we left him. I remember that in December. So we've gone through the article that talked about his interest in cypress trees and olive trees and talked about the meaning of that. And now we're going back and sort of tracing the biography. And he's a very, very short artistic career, only about 10 years, and really only packed into like the last 5 of that. He never stops working. And so you remember that in the fall and winter of 1888, he is getting increasingly strung out. And he had moved to Provence, to Arles, in Provence, with the idea of starting an artist colony. And he invites friends from Paris that he had known, and none of them show up except Gauguin, who he was really particularly close to. I found this out, that how they met. Gauguin was actually represented by Van Gogh's brother, by his agent was Theo Van Gogh, and that's how they met. Because Gauguin, we'll see later tonight, was very much interested in sort of finding these primal, savage areas of France where Industrial Revolution had cleaned things up. And so he was in Brittany, and that's what Van Gogh was saying, hey, why don't you try Provence out? And as we read in that reading for Van Gogh, and what we saw in the reading for Cézanne, is that there's a whole group in Provence that's very much interested in its native traditions unspoiled by progress. And that's something that interests Gauguin as well. So Van Gogh having met Gauguin in Paris in the very brief time he was there, 18 months or so he was there, is trying to convince him to come to the south of France. And their friendship is an interesting one because their approach to art is so very different. And this was really the theme of that last reading, which is that Gauguin is very much interested in a sort of an imaginary art, an art of the spirit, an art of mythology, an art of spirituality that's not necessarily Christian or anything like that, but just beyond the physical world, metaphysical. And Gauguin is much more rooted in observation. So they have this kind of antithetical approach, but as the reading on Van Gogh said, his real interest in these terribly emotional pictures like The Starry Night are due to the influence of Gauguin. A more emotional, individualized approach to nature versus direct observation. Okay. Well, Gauguin arrives November 88, stays for about 6 weeks or so, right up to around Christmas. And after being shut in for about 3 days because of a terrible storm in Arles, Gauguin tells us that Van Gogh came at him with a knife, tried to kill him. And he left altogether, and that's when he took the knife, cut off part of his ear. Was after this ill-fated moment with Gauguin. Now, Gauguin could be making this entire thing up, who knows? Well, Gauguin makes a load of things up, right? Gauguin is not a reputable source. So, if he's the only people telling us that Van Gogh attacked him with a knife, we would be well advised to take it with a grain of salt. Okay? But, there's no doubt that Van Gogh cut off his ear. There's no doubt about that. In fact, he wrapped it up. He took it to a house of prostitution that he used to go to with Gauguin. He would give it to them. Goodness knows why. Right? Then has to be hospitalized because he's bleeding profusely. You know his head wounds bleed like nobody's business, right? Still painful while he's in the hospital. He's let out in January. He's there for almost a month, right? 2 or 3 weeks he's in the hospital. And he's let out, and he starts to paint again, and sometimes he paints while he's in the hospital. The one on your right, he says he wants to make a little bit of money. He's going to paint a really chic still life, he says, to make a lot of money. And we didn't look at it in any detail, but it's a fantastic work. So next time at the National Gallery, take a look at it. He is able to make the paint look like the lemon, especially that one right above the gloves, where he's putting the paint on so much that it looks like that nappy skin of a lemon rind. And I think he does the same thing when it comes to the cypress branches. Those are, it's not rosemary, but cypress. And we read how he felt about cypresses, what cypresses meant. They have a wood that preserves very well. It doesn't tend to rot. And for this reason, it's allegorically, symbolically linked to immortality. But at the same time, it has connotations of death, having been planted near graveyards. Van Gogh associated it in his writings with Egyptian obelisks. Goodness knows the Egyptian culture, the ancient Egyptian culture, is very much bound up with death. But an obelisk is like the Washington Monument, right? And it connects the earth with the heavens. It's based on the symbol of the god Ra, the god of the sun. So there's this idea of the connection of the sky and the earth. Van Gogh sees these things in cypress trees, a sort of natural version of that, right? So we should bring some of those symbolisms into a still life where he incorporates it as well. They're also, of course, particularly Provençal, right? Particularly of Provence, as are these lemons, which obviously don't grow where Van Gogh is from, right? Well, he gets out in January from the physical hospital, right? This is not a mental hospital, but a real hospital for treating wounds and diseases. And 3 months later, 4 months later, he has a major breakdown. He melts. And he checks himself in to a mental hospital in the town of Saint-Remy, R-E-M-Y, Saint-Remy, where he will spend the next year plus of his life. Checks in May. He's there all the way till June of the next year, so May 89 to June of 90. Living in and out of the asylum in Saint-Remy. And this is where he becomes most interested in cypress trees. This is where he becomes most interested in olive groves. Because he's self-incarcerated, he's self-inducted. That means he doesn't have to stay there, right? He's not been locked up by anybody, right? I found a better scan of the picture from the VMFA than the one that I had last week. And so I just wanted to bring it in. But this is, again, while he's in the hospital at Saint-Remy, he paints olive trees, those light bluish scrub that you see just beyond the fence. That's the olive trees, right? That fence that's kind of running along in, oh, sorry about that. Get my pen going, right? This scrub right here, that's the olive trees, is that area right there. And growing in the wild in that particular case. Pushed off to the side as the wheat fields for things that make more money, but intrinsically Provence. This picture shows the sort of wild emotionalism that we also see in Starry Night that indicates to the author of the reading that we had last week, it indicates the impact of Gauguin on the one hand, but on the other hand also indicates sort of his own mental turmoil. And it's a style of art that he eventually gives up for something slightly more sedate as we move into the fall of 1889, fall and winter. Right, so here we are in the spring at Saint-Remy. So he's there for from May until the following June of 1890. We have one of the last self-portraits he did from his stay in the asylum at the National Gallery. And by all of the Van Gogh scholars' account, this is one of the last two self-portraits that he ever did. So it's after he snagged his ear off, but you'll notice he's turned away from us, so we don't see that, right? We don't see the missing ear. It's one of two that he did, and he's, again, like in the Starry Night, and like in the wheat fields picture on the right, we can see that there's that emotional quality to the way the paint is handled. It's really vibrant and vigorous, right? And being pushed around as much as he can. And there's almost no section of it that lies down flat. There's no sort of, you notice in the landscape at the right that everything seems as if it's moving. The clouds, the hills, everything seems to be swirling and caught in a state of flux. And it's not necessarily because of the breeze, like it is with Sarah's picture, which we'll see later. But it's more that it's a pantheistic idea of the nature that's in turmoil. And the same thing is true with the self-portrait, I think. That if you look at there, I've got some details, right? The background, for example, that's fingerprints. He's gone in with his hand, and he's worked the paint with his fingers, right? It's not brushwork there, but he's laid in the glue, and then he's come back and just messed it up. And everywhere you look, it's like nature is alive around him, right? That background has become part of a dynamic of movement and power and forces that you maybe can't see with your physical eyes, you know? And it's of a spirit with Starry Night. Right? It's very much of a spirit with Starry Night. And that same movement comes into his hair, where you can see his lifelong lessons of, you remember when he was in Paris, he met Pissarro, and he went and visited the studio of Seurat, Georges Seurat, who I talked about online. And both of those artists were very much interested in the physical properties of color and how we perceive color, and in particular the way in which opposites on the color wheel interact with each other. Right? So look at the greens that he brings into the oranges, right? And those aren't exact opposites, right? I think orange's opposite is blue. But it's worth noting here that a lot of Van Gogh's pigments are what we call fugitive pigments. They change over time because the chemicals that are in the pigment oxidize and change, right? So a lot of his pictures that we see aren't the same colors as he painted them, right? Not exactly. The bedroom picture, for example, is a totally different color. But he's still playing with these opposites, this orange beard and hair, and that blue background, which is obviously made up, isn't it? That blue background. And you'll notice that even if you bring it down into his cloak, his artist's cloak that you see here, it's almost like he's one with that environment, isn't it? That the same application of paint that makes up the background also makes up his cloak, you know? He's sort of blending in a way, with the world around him. Only really his face sort of stands out from that. He makes a point of bringing almost unnaturally into the frame his palette, right, and his paint brushes. And one of the things that we talked about a week ago was the fact that he saw his work as a painter as being work, not as being recreation, not as being a hobby, but as being physical labor. And when he wrote about painting workers in the fields outside of Arles, he talked about the fact that what he's doing as a painter was similar to what they were doing. That we both have to do this quickly and get in out of the sun. Now, he saw kinship there between the painter and the worker, right, the laborer. And so we can talk about this picture as being a picture of a working man. He has the tools of his trade. He's not posing as anything else other than the man as a worker. And that's not true in every self-portrait, but it's true in this one. Right? He makes a point of showing us the tools of his trade. He wants us to see him as a laborer. And that was an element of his personality, an element of his career that was important going all the way back to the beginning. Remember, he had started his career, even before being a painter, as being a missionary to the working class, in particular to the coal miners in Belgium. So he sees a kinship between himself and manual laborers. And I think in many ways he's putting himself forward in this portrait as a laborer, someone who works for a living. Other few little tricks throughout his stuff. I mean, you know, he pages out there. Just look at the way in which he loves outlining that blue outline around his orange thumb. You see, just again and again, he'll add a touch of outline. The first PA I ever had 20 years ago, he just turned 40, came to visit. My PA is 40. And we wanted to go to the National Gallery, so we were looking at this. And that bit of dark on his ear is red. You can't see it in this picture, right? And I took a new picture, and I forgot to put it in the slideshow, right? But you can see that little dark part that makes this little bit here, right, that shadow on his ear, is in fact bright red, right? And he's just using these alternative colors as ways of adding accents. That's very true in space, all the green colors that you see in space. So look at how it's outlined around the brushes, the edge of the palette, and around the hole through which the sun is coming. But then that other wonderful trick, which is the paint sits up on the canvas and really makes you aware of the flatness of the canvas, right? Like that sort of calligraphy that we saw in the picture of the public gardens at Arles, those green things in the corner. But here it's even more fascinating because that's supposed to be paint on the palette. It looks like you just squeeze some paint out of the tube onto the painted palette, you know? So the pink and the green and the yellow and the blue, they look like they would have looked sitting on the actual palette itself. And he doesn't bother to paint them per se, he's just putting some paint down. So he's emulating the reality of what that palette was here. This is a great little trick in his painting. Creepy eyes. Again, remember that he's not entirely well while he's painting. He's in the middle of the asylum, and even as we get closer to his eyes, you'll notice again the green of the eye has a fleck of orange placed into it. The face itself, the facial tone, which is primarily pink, is made up of a melange of greens and pinks and reds and browns. Kind of like the pink sky that we saw in the olive grove picture, which is a little bit later than this. But still is very much pulling these colors together into the standard color scheme. This is the other portrait he painted at exactly the same time, and you'll notice this was in Paris. Right? A very different palette. Still a little unnerving in his stare, but not quite as desperate looking, I think, as ours is. If you look at them side by side, it looks a little bit more determined, a little bit less gaunt, less starved, you know? But his eyes still are these beady whirlpools that kind of suck in everything around them. Still, you'll notice that the landscape or the background is handled in a way that suggests the starry night, right? That kind of vibrant working of the negative space. That suggests, again, that turmoil is going through this time. Side by side, it's important to note these as different kinds of personas. He's the working artist in his smock in our picture. He's not always that way in his self-portrait. In the one from the Orsay Museum in Paris, he's dressed as a gentleman with a button-up shirt, right, and a coat with a vest, right, three-piece suit. His hair is slightly better combed, right. It's more presentable, the public Van Gogh versus the studio Van Gogh, and that's again important to remember when we look at these that each one carries a slightly different message. With Van Gogh's interest in labor, we'll turn to this. Remember, he's not locked up, right? So the road says this is just outside of Saint-Remy. This is not back in Arles. But again, he's in the hospital when he paints this. This is in the fall of 1889. So it's around the same time he starts doing the olive tree pictures. And it's a group of manual laborers working on the streets in Saint-Remy, replacing the paving stones on the streets, right? And some of them are working on the sidewalk, and some of them are working on massive blocks on the street, and we see business going on as normal around it. The women walking on the sidewalk, carrying their wares to and from the market, and having to detour ever so slightly to get around them. Nice detail of the trees, where again we can see him using these opposite colors on the color wheel to give you that vibrancy, right? And that's again a trick that he learned via Pissarro from Seurat, both of whom were very much interested in those theories. And again, those are discussed in great detail on one of the online lecturers. But again, it's all about labor. Oh, I'm ahead of myself, right? That's not a detail, obviously, it's a different version of the same picture, right? This was in Cleveland. And I wasn't even looking at the model. I was looking at the figures in the middle between the trees that we're talking about next and thinking, why did that one come out so blurry? It's not as blurry, it's unfinished. He wrote a letter to Teo about this, talking about the fact that he painted one version outside, and then he painted the second version in the studio, right? So rather than just finishing the one he painted outside, he used it as the basis for a entirely new canvas. And this is something he did kind of frequently, painting one version outside and then coming back into the other. And ours is the more finished version, the studio version, whereas the one in Cleveland on your left was actually painted outside. You can see the handling of the touchstones in the foreground, for example, especially at the base of the tree, is much more sketchy, right? The figures that are working not only with the cart, with the large paving stones on the right, but also between the trees, the women on the left and whatnot, all of them are treated much more summary fashion, right? Very abbreviated in their outline and not fully worked up and darkened in, where he's taking into account the dark accents and how they work with the entire composition. There's a close-up of our woman with her basket from the market in the foreground. And again, even in these darks, we've got those color wheel opposites being used. And everywhere we look, we can see he's working it up. This is, again, it's got some of the wildness that we associate with Van Gogh, but it's slightly more mellow because by the October, November, when he's going back out again to paint, as the reading we read last week said, his style settles down a bit, right, at this point in his life. And so this might be looked at as a version of Van Gogh that is not quite as wild as the self-portrait in the National Gallery or the famous Starry Night. He seems very much caught up with sort of daily life in Saint Remy and sort of the charms of daily life, these women coming and going and moving their way past the houses. I always have thought that Van Gogh was fantastic at being at once cartoony and really understanding three-dimensional structure of things. Like that lamp it's not, he's not doing a measured perspective scheme, but he knows, right? He knows how that fits together. He knows how that thing works in three dimensions. And the angle of it is just perfect for its placement on the street, right? The same thing is true with the blocks in the foreground. The perspective is incredibly heightened. And at the same time, it works perfectly well. And look at all the color opposites, right? The green and the red in the window. This is something we see in almost every Van Gogh work that we've looked at. There are our people hewing the stone. They're cutting the stones for the paving. They've got their cart that's delivered them there, and they're busy working. You can see that parts of it are still left terribly sketchy, right? The hind of the man with the red hat is bare canvas, right? It's not been painted at all. All he's painted is the outlines and those little blue accents that add to it. But like other people that we've seen in the landscape in Van Gogh's pictures, they're like scarecrows almost, right? They don't really have facial features. You can paint them just fine when he's doing portraits, but these people are these sort of anonymous workers that come and go to pass them. That remain strangers to Van Gogh, right? They're not really part of this world. But it seems like it's a busy state, right? There's a whole lot going on here. I was taken by this scene through the trees because they look very much like they're working in a field almost. You could imagine them being field workers plowing, digging and whatnot. And if we look at enough pictures by Van Gogh of men working the field, that pose becomes really very common, especially the way in which the two of them are in parallel poses, right? In mirrored poses, the exact same pose twice. And I think in many ways, Van Gogh is here, again, giving us another image of hard labor that is based on his ongoing experience with observing and depicting rural labor, field labor, that he's now transposing and transporting into these images of urban labor, labor in the cities. Right. So if we look at those two guys through the window and we think about these two guys up in Baltimore, right? This is a wonderful little picture. In Baltimore Museum of Art, probably from the same time. Some people say it might be from the last few months of his life when he moved back toward Paris. But part of me thinks it's the color scheme, right, is fall colors and whatnot, and that's about the time he starts going outside to paint. And we have this sort of mysterious landscape with these trees and these wonderful waves of color. They almost seem more close to his wilder, more psychotic pictures earlier, where there's a woman standing there shaded entirely in blue underneath the trees. And then difficult to see, but two little guys in between the trees that are only barely sketched there. And you'll notice the pose of those two. And then we go back to our road vendors. And you can see that there's a parallel that he's drawing between one kind of labor and the other. And maybe it is that he sees sort of all labor the same, right? All work the same. Well, he's in the asylum at Saint Remy all the way until May of 1890, at which point he moves back to the region around Paris, Auvers, which we've seen before. Pissarro painted in Auvers. Cézanne painted in Auvers. Right? In fact, Auvers was where Pissarro told Cézanne to ditch the muddy colors. Right? The house of Père Lacroix that we looked at in the National Gallery, one of Cézanne's first really colorful pictures, was painted in Auvers. Right? So for Van Gogh, there was some interest in going to Auvers in that it had this Impressionist legacy. Right? It was an important city. And if you remember our maps that we looked at, Auvers is right on the Oise River, which right at the point where it feeds into the Seine. So the Seine sort of comes down out of Le Havre. Right? I'm going upstream, but from Le Havre, the Seine comes down, it kind of swirls around, and right in the middle of Paris, does this big serpentine S shape, right? And just as it works its way out of Paris, that's where Auvers is, on the Oise River. Okay? But I don't know. Maybe Sarah can tell us, but I don't think he ever paints the river while he's there. Yeah, and I think that's kind of because that's what it was known for. That's why Cézanne went there. That's why Pissarro went there. And unlike Pissarro's picture too, it doesn't really focus on labor per se, just the fruits of labor, right? And he's still suffering badly. Look at the this is in the social question, but look at the mountains in the background. Not much of them, but again they're handled in that more expressive quality. And we have the results of work coming from that. The farmhouse, it's actually the Manor 4 farmhouse in the background. But we can see this in this cultivated wheat field in the foreground, but we don't actually see the laborers anymore. Right? There's an extreme level of isolation, and this isn't true in every work, but it does seem to come up quite a bit in his paintings in Auvers, is a sense of greater isolation. As we look at this more closely, look at the way the fruit of the wheat is depicted. And you'll notice that there's that sort of calligraphic placement of some of the yellows, in particular this sort of area over here. That again almost looks as if Japanese calligraphy or something, as much as it is painting trying to illustrate something in particular. Now, I mentioned that Auvers would have been very attractive to Van Gogh as a site to go see, but and stay at because of its Impressionist legacy. But really, the reason he went there was his brother Theo was incredibly worried about it, as you might imagine, right? He's not had a good time in Provence by himself, and Theo had to come down, right? When he got off his ear, Theo came rushing down on the next train from Paris to be with him and got there on Christmas Day, to help his brother. So when he finally gets out of the asylum, Theo says, why don't you come be closer to me, right? And so Auvers was just outside of Paris and an easier place for Theo to sort of keep tabs on his brother. And, Theo's got he's a caring brother, I don't want to discount that, but he's got a cash interest here too, because Van Gogh's pictures aren't selling a lot. And basically, all the paint that you see on all these canvases is bought by Teo, right? So that's, I mean, you know, he's got an interest in this as well. Yeah. And he puts him, Vincent, under the care of a doctor, Dr. Paul Gachet, who is depicted in a couple of paintings, and here in an etching that we have, there's an impression in National Gallery of the Netherlands, Phillips, of this etching of Paul Gachet, who was a homeopathic physician, right? He believed in treating the whole person, not trying to just fix the one thing that's wrong. And that's kind of was part of his care, was to sort of, you know, palliative care, so not sort of take care of him as a person rather than treat his mental disease. And this has led to some criticism of Gachet. But again, Van Gogh never, ever stops working. I mean, this is an amazing thing, that no matter what happens to him, right? This is something we should all say to ourselves. Those times when you get, it happens to me more than you, when you get too tired, you just can't even pick up a pencil. You know? Van Gogh would sketch something and do something else that night, right? He's in the area around over there for, I think, like 2.5 months. He takes like 70 pictures while he's there. Crazy output, right? I mean, this is crazy. A picture a day, right? But your seniors are doing that now because senior show's coming up. Imagine doing that all the time, right? A picture a day, a painting a day. And that's not counting the drawings. That's not counting the etchings. Right? That's the paintings. So, incredible dedication, right? And I guess you could say, well, yeah, because he's crazy. You know, he's driven by demons, if you will, to do this stuff. But it's true. He's absolutely driven. We very recently acquired at the National Gallery one of these very late pictures from Aubert, the wheat fields in Aubert, something just called Fields in Aubert, which, for my money, quickly became one of the great pictures in the National Gallery. I just, you know, when we got it, like, that? And this picture and the still life that we started today with, both came from the collection of the Mellon family, M-E-L-L-O-N, who have been long-standing benefactors of the National Gallery, as well as the museum in Richmond. We're lucky because we get all the good pictures. And the sporting pictures, these men on horses that we used to have at the Mellon Country Estate, those all went to Richmond. And I'm not a big fan of, like, guys posing on horseback, right? So we got the good stuff, right? And they, Mrs. Mellon, the granddaughter of the original benefactor of the National Gallery, recently died, and children are liquidating the estate. They had not been seen in public in 50 years. They had not been seen outside the Mellon estate, right, in Virginia, rural Virginia, in 50 years. And so for many people, these are like new Van Goghs, right? Because if you think about 50 years ago, it's the 60s. Yeah? Early, mid-60s was last time they were in public. Imagine what reproduction quality was like then. And what these things coming out now are like, whoa, right? They're not black and white. They're not grainy. It's fantastic find. So again, here we have, we still seem to have been of a certain interest to Van Gogh while he's in Aubert. Again, lonely as can be, we have a path with no one on it, leading over a hill. No view whatsoever of the Seine or the Oise rivers, the two that are there. Still some of that dynamism that's picking up again, similar to what we saw in the Starry Night. In this case, I think he's trying to evoke the idea of a windswept day. The way the clouds are swirling in rhythm with the land beneath it. But at the same time, nothing is fixed. Nothing is firm or non-moving. Everything is in flux. And he does this through the application of paint everywhere you look. I've got some good details of this. Where you can see, again, I think that interest in sort of calligraphy, the way in which he puts the paint down. Wet through wet, dragging it straight through from the green wet paint down below up into the sky. But then it breaks apart and just becomes these disembodied strokes that look as much like non-Western handwriting as they do anything else. The thickness of that paint is just, makes you want to go eat cake or something. It looks like frosting, doesn't it? It's just applied so deliciously across the surface everywhere you look. It looks like French fries. No, leeks maybe. A color of leeks. But I think of that cloud sort of up on the right side of my detail, and how that paint, cream cheese, right, on a bagel. Right. And the type of Wheatfield, I guess, food metaphors are great. But look at the wonderful details of that. Well, again, more of these sort of holographic fronds coming down and then burying on top. And this is an explosion of blues and whites and yellows that make up the darks. Interestingly, here, this is how dawning on me, they sort of abandoned his opposite on the color wheel thing, right? Where the color contrast that we saw before, there are no oranges choked up against the blues, no pinks up against the gray or greens, right? No purples against the yellows. He's sort of lost that for, and it gives it this overall greenish tonality. Now there are shots of color that have no place there. There's some yellow and blue in the past that you can see in the larger version, but on the norm, it's almost like he's getting back to description, even though it's so expressionist. I love that hedgerow up here, the tips of those flowers, how he's come back in. It's just, like he almost feels like his brush is driven by the wind, and picking up on the different elements that are there. And again, this cloud that is incredibly dense. If you have the painting being 125 years old, right? How that paint survived without somebody knocking a piece of it off? Because it's on canvas after all. That means the back is flexible. If it were mine, I'd have ruined it by now. I'm a klutz. I'm always breaking stuff. My wife and I only buy cheap wine glasses. We break them once every 2 or 3 months accidentally. But I would have knocked off part of that paint. So you see where the cracks have come, and it's not, it could come off very easily. It's so very, very, very thick. We can see this better here almost than again in the National Gallery, although it's much better to go in person as we dive into these colors. Look at how thick and wet that white is against the blue, deep in the shadow, or how I come back in at the very end with these yellows on top of everything, and it looks as if it's in a fine. All the green paint is still wet. And there's a fury almost, isn't there, to the way he's painting. You can almost sense the non-stop activity. The artist doesn't sit back and ponder the canvas. Cezanne does this. What's this canvas? I'll come back and build something. At least that's the sense you get from a Cezanne, that he's going to go to work on areas and then sort of think about how the structure is. And he's like tearing things up, and you can almost see him as one of these cartoons where the arms just disappear into a blur while he's painting, because it just keeps getting built up. And how you know when you're done is anybody's guess. Right? I'm sorry. Go back, right? Just get closer and closer to these, and you can see that he's really aware at this point in his life, toward the end of his life here, how paint behaves. I love that flower at the bottom, because he's able to take wet paint on the brush, stick it into some more wet paint, pull it away, and have it drag in a way that works and helps to make the flower work. By the way, now that we can do this, an amateur like me can get photos like this, the days of forgeries are over. There's no way you can ever forge this picture and have it look right, because we can all document it now as to exactly how that paint is built up to look like that flower budding out and exploding as he put wet into that. So he's spending his last few months, moves there in May. He's there until July. On the 27th of July in 1890, he shot himself in the chest. Used to be thought that this was his last painting. If you see the 1950s movie with Kirk Douglas, have you ever seen that? It's actually pretty good. Kirk Douglas is Van Gogh, and he looks like him. And Anthony Quinn is Gauguin. It's called Lust for Life, right? Go find it on Netflix. It's not bad, right? Usually artist movies suck, right? Really bad. But this is actually pretty good. And in that biography, this is the painting he's making while he's shooting himself, right? And you can see why people might have thought that, because it's got crows, and crows are this harbinger of death and doom. The black bird has come, and it does have that same emotive quality that we've been seeing in the other works from the Auvert period. But it's too finished to be something he shot himself while painting. And now we're pretty sure there's a lot of unfinished works from around this time that he probably was working on when he died. Right? But nonetheless, he shot himself in the chest. He may have been painting in a wheat field, but not necessarily this one. The bullet missed all of his vital organs. He didn't die right away. The bullet lodged near his spine. He was able to walk back to the hotel where he was staying, which, by the way, recently been turned into a tourist trap, a B&B. You can go rent a room in the house where Van Gogh spent his last months in Auvert. Maybe next summer, we'll see what they want to do. But he walked back to the hotel where he was staying. There's no surgeon in town. They had to radio away for one, and he ended up dying of an infection from the bullet because he couldn't get the bullet out. Right? There was no one there skilled enough to remove the bullet so close to his spine. He ended up, instead of bleeding to death, he died of infection, right, from the bullet. 30 hours later, right, 30 hours of suffering from his self-inflicted wound. K.O. got there in time, which is, I guess, the nice little silver lining to this cloud is that K.O. got there in time to watch Van Gogh die. We've been doing a lot with biography, our last 2 or 3 artists, haven't we? Right? With Toulouse-Lautrec, with Van Gogh, biography has played a huge role, which we didn't talk so much about when we looked at the earlier Impressionists. And there's reasons for this, I think. Because with these artists, we're getting a much more emotional, subjective approach to art that almost demands that we know more about their lives and how they lived them. That's it for Gauguin. I wanted to talk a little bit about the tests and whatnot. And so here's what I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking of cutting Gauguin off of the exam because you guys got enough to do, especially you seniors. You've got your plates pretty full through Friday when the senior opening is, right? So I think that to keep, I had initially thought of cutting Gauguin and going to the museum on Friday, but Gracie told me downstairs, no, we got to be here all day, and Joe said, don't take them off campus, right? Because you guys probably, who knows, are you going to show up on Friday, or maybe out down there like, I got to get the train missing. I've got, if you don't know, I've got 4 students in here are graduating seniors, and the senior show opens on Friday at 6 o'clock. Not only should you come, but you must come. I'm going to demand it. Over and above that, it's free food, right? So come, but also just, support, because you're going to be a graduating senior next, Crystal, right? And you want people to come to yours as well. Yes, please. Oh, do it. Yes. Joe's got postcards. There was a stack downstairs. I've got a stack in my office too. Drop by after class. I'll get one for you. Right. Tell your friends. Show up. Yeah. Did Caden get one? You get one? Give one to Caden over there. Joe. Isolate the one guy in the class. No agenda there. There's so few guys in the program. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to cut Gauguin off of the slide list. You want me to still talk about him today and Friday? Or, no, because you don't like him. So, should I still talk about him? I got the slides here. I can talk about it. Or, here's an alternative. We're done early today, and on Friday we do a review for the exam. Yes, yes, yes? How does that sound then? Okay? We tilt and go. That means all the time I put in the nice little Gauguin pictures last night. Was from off, but that's okay because Gauguin is really kind of different. Even though he's friends with Van Gogh, he's so subjective that it's a very different kind of fit to what we've been talking about. So Van Gogh is as good as anybody to sort of wrap up. I don't have any sort of poignant closing words on Impressionism, post-Impressionism, other than you guys are so lucky to live here because these things play best live, and you can go down for free and see them all the time. And we never really talked much about the Krieger collection, but gosh, they've got 4 or 5 Monets in a single room up there. You should get up and test. It costs like $250 to go to the Krieger. We're so lucky here. It's like if you think about the metro area, it's a fantastic place to study this stuff. So this is the first time we've taught this class based on local collections rather than visiting show or something abroad. And I can't think of anything better to start with than this because this is really, I think, one of the absolute strengths of living in D.C. art-wise is the vast amount of impressions and post-impressions art that we have. And I don't know if you guys know this because you assume that most of you live around here. You never have to struggle to see it. You go to MoMA and it's just a freaking nightmare. Like people elbowing you and standing in front of you and the Mets know better. Last 2 or 3 times I've been to MoMA, I thought, God, we are spoiled. You can go sit in that room and say something and be by yourself. The Raptor room. That's pretty horrible. Or the Demoiselle d'Avignon. They're horrible. And taking pictures with the distance sensor lights, all of a sudden it glows pink for a second. Drives me nuts. Right? So go down and see it. You got my email that you've got a review sheet up on Blackboard on the main page, right? I put up a PowerPoint of the works for the exam. The exam is what? Wednesday? Is that right? Or Thursday? Tuesday. Tuesday at 3. The final paper is supposed to be in, I said it's supposed to be Friday, but I said you can have till Monday. Right? But I can't take it a lot later than that for all of you, simply because I got exams to grade to do Monday at noon, and Monday after test week, right? So I need those early in the week so that I can get them graded, okay? If you have, a couple of you are still missing the draft from it. I've got to talk to you about that, okay? But otherwise, if you're hitting troubles with your research and writing, let me know. I know that the 4 of you that have the show obviously have bigger fish to fry before tomorrow morning's final critique. So you've got stuff to do tonight with that, right? And I'll see you in the morning to talk about that. So Friday, what you should do for Friday, right, is we'll have a review. So bring copies of the readings, because we might want to poke our nose into those, right, the different readings that we have. So if you go back and look at the class list that's on Canvas, it will say the author's name when we've talked about them, right? So I think there's 4 of those that you have. So bring copies of those, even if there wasn't a response, because what we'll do is we'll sort of talk about what kinds of things you might expect on the exam, okay? And go back over the review of that. So if you have any time to do any review before Friday, do so. Get yourself ready to sort of talk about it in class, and we'll spend our last day class doing that instead, okay? Rather than go GAN. All right? So you're done early today. I will see some of you in the morning and the rest of you on Friday.